mine. That's how it works, right? If you're a farm subsidy person who gets all sorts of money for growing corn, and then don't cut mine. If you get subsidy for not growing corn, well, don't cut mine. And all of this is a problem, and that's why there's a give and take, and everybody has to take some of the pain.
But there's no give and take. It's all for the rich.
Somebody else has to. Can you give the speaker to somebody else? There's no disagreement with you. The point is education, which is one of the first things that's cut. The budgets are cut. I know from my community they cut a lot of the budget out. Still had a 3% increase, but they cut all sorts of teachers and programs because everything is costing more and more. We have to get control of this. It is the government's job is to weigh all these things and to look over. We don't individually have access to all that information, but they have to work together.
The topic you're talking about here is revolution.
Yes, sir.
And the revolution begins with economy, begins with technology, and it begins with the forgiveness of all debts. At the end of World War I, every country in Europe owed America money. It was forgiven. At the end of World War II, we spent all kinds of money, and that money is being forgiven. Now, I think what we have to do in this revolution is to have a complete elimination of all debt of every country. And that would be one hell of a revolution. Because
how can we do that? In other words, China
we shouldn't pay our bills, and they shouldn't pay our bills. We should forgive everybody's bills and start from zero. And you'll find you'll have a revolution.
That's called bankruptcy.
In the whole world, though. In the whole world.
I don't think bankruptcy is the way out, because I don't think the Chinese would take kindly to $1 trillion being
well, what
forgiven.
could they do about it? If we all...
What are they going to do about it?
Yeah.
Well, they have a pretty large army, and they have atomic weaponry, and they've got a lot of...
well, the whole world does, doesn't it?
The point is, see, you're saying something that's potentially would create a revolution. The fact is that if the Chinese, if we weren't permitted to do business in China, most of our major companies would go bankrupt, because more and more the business of our major companies is in China.
In answer to your question, that there will be a war, quite frankly, why are we financing all of Europe? Why are we putting all our money into Europe, into Afghanistan, and into all these countries?
I was not aware we're putting our money into Europe.
What do you think we're doing? We're giving all kinds of aid, trillions, to all the countries, Afghanistan, Iran, you name it.
Afghanistan and Iran, we're not giving nothing to Iran.
What do you think we're doing? We're spending...
We do not give money to Iran. Pakistan, yes. Iran, no.
We're spending money on armies to take care of them.
Okay, the basic point you're making is that the foreign aid we're giving and military aid we're giving across the world, we should rethink. And that, I agree with that. Most people would agree with that, because we are giving a lot of money away to other countries and to support other countries. The bulk of it still is Afghanistan and Iraq. And there, the president said he wanted to pull out. The military wants to stay. Of course, the military would stay there 200 years if they had their choice. The point is that they have a culture, they have a way of life that has fought off the Romans, the Mongols, the Alexander the Great, the French, the English. We're not going to be there and really change them very much, okay? So I agree with that. We have to rethink the money we're spending in those. And there are some arguments that say we should for these and those reasons, which we're not going to discuss today. Like, we give Pakistan an awful lot of money, all right? And we know that 10% or so of the money goes to the Taliban, which then they use to kill us. The point is, do we do away with all the aid to Pakistan in order to prevent that 10%. Well, the 90% goes to things which we think are positive. For instance, the Taliban could maybe take over all of Pakistan, and if Pakistan, has an atomic bomb, and if Pakistan and India are still at war, and all of a sudden Taliban says, well, now we're going to start throwing our weight around, well, we can throw something over to Israel, we can throw something over to India, and we're not going to survive if they have a war there, an atomic war. We're not going to survive, all right? So there's reasons to give the 100%, even though we know 10% is going against us. So you and I can't stand here or sit here and say, we got the answer. You don't. It's very, very interconnected how the world politics is played, looked at, and protection for us. There are many things that the Pakistanis have done that have helped us in our war against al-Qaeda. They were upset about the fact that we didn't tell them about Osama bin Laden because we knew that some people in there would have told him and he would have escaped, okay? But there are other people there that have helped us immeasurably. Even in Iran, we get help on al-Qaeda, all right? Because their enemy is al-Qaeda as well. My point is that there are things that you and I are not aware of in international affairs, and which is another topic for another time, but that gives us pause when you say, stop giving aid. You mean we'll stop giving aid to Israel? We give them billions of dollars. We gave billions to Egypt as well. And what did we do? We bought peace in the Middle East with the billions. Oh, it went to a dictator, didn't it, right? But the fact is there was no war with Egypt and Israel. There could have been, and there may be, all right? The point is, we did do some things. We paid off Gaddafi, didn't we, to dismantle his atomic weaponry? Yeah, but the point is, it is a difficult business, and none of you here, unless there are some career diplomats here that want to speak up, okay, that say that there are difficult decisions to make. But some of this aid has to be looked at because we really have to bring it back to ourselves. Yes.
So, okay. First of all, let me tell you where I'm coming from. I've taught political science for the past 18 years. And the thing that I've noticed is going on, first of all, we don't have a democracy here. Democracy depends on everyone having a say in what goes on. That's number one. We don't have a representative form of government because I spoke to many politicians, and I asked them, let me ask you a question. Two people come to you, one is qualified for the job and the other one gives a large amount of money for the election, for his own election. Which one would you give the job? And he said, come on, it's payback time. So we don't have a representative form of government. Now, insofar as historically speaking, every government that wants power has to have a political enemy. Hitler, the Jews in Germany were living very, very well, but they were vulnerable. So Hitler came along, and at that time, of course, there was a depression in Germany. He he said, your problems are the Jews. So he got, and Heifetz, General Heifetz once said, he said, if you don't get the people behind you, don't go to war. So what you're doing here is you're presenting all of these problems, but the solution to the problems you have to take into consideration. The solution to the problems are, here in the United States, 45% of the people vote. You take a place like Australia, which I've traveled to Australia and I had contact there. Australia says that if you don't vote, you're penalized by being taxed. And if you do it a second time, you're taxed heavily. Norway, who has been very, very not complacent, but a very, very fine government that I've followed, because what they have done is they've taken into consideration the workers and also the bosses. What we have here is our country. They're looking for the governments to be smaller, when the government is the one that has to take care of us. And if you reduce the size of the government and the power of the government, then you have no one that you can fall back on to say to the wealthy people that are really bilking us and trying to get rid of all of the things that Germany, under Hitler, they had benefits for the unemployed and for the sick. Under Hitler, we're a wealthy country, and we're trying to fight to knock it out. So if you're talking in terms of what the problems are, yes, the problems are great. The question, and I've said this 10 years ago, I said to my class, we're fertile for a revolution here, because we're going to have an awful lot of people that are unemployed, and they need money to feed their children. And sooner, and especially with the guns that are being distributed here in the United States, and every day that you listen to the news on the newspapers, guys coming out with guns and blasting, what do you call it? And it's ridiculous.
I understand what you're saying, and let me answer you.
Yeah, but I mean, we know the problems. We have to solve them.
I understand you. Let me answer your statement. Go ahead. I agree with you that we have become, my opinion,
Thank you.
like you have your opinion, that we have become, unfortunately, very dysfunctional in many parts of our body politic. The gun situation with the NRA and the laws that they're promulgating around the country, the fact that, as I mentioned earlier, the lobbyists are the most powerful force in Washington, more powerful than the legislators, the fact that you have to raise not millions of dollars anymore, but billions of dollars to run for political office in this country. I agree with you. There have to be some basic changes in how we go about running the country, because as in most places in human nature, and I revert to human nature discussions all the time, is that we all want the best and most for ourselves first, and our families and our friends. And when you have power, what? Corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And that's where we have been headed because of the political contribution system. The Supreme Court just passed a ruling that companies and unions can spend unlimited amounts for elections. It leaves the rest of us individuals actually less powerful, as you would say, and as I agree. Unfortunately, most people don't vote. We're not forced to vote. It's a free country. I don't want to vote. I don't vote. And that's another problem that we have in this country, that not enough of the people in the country actually vote. So we are dysfunctional. We have to have some basic changes. That's why I say the only one interested in that would be a third party who can say these things, other than those people that are collecting the money. Yes, and this is a particular problem. In England, for instance, Murdoch got a lot of power in England because they are not permitted to spend a lot of money in the elections, and they count on public opinion. Public opinion is swayed by the press, so they paid off Murdoch because he published stories favorable to them. So there's always going to be a give and a take. Yes, sir.
You and President Obama think that negotiations are possible. He has been talking negotiations since he was running for president, and he's still talking about it. So far, to date, he is the only one that has been giving up his positions, and the Republican parties have not budged one iota. So you've got to take into effect that people who have certain positions, whether it be on the left or the right, are very adamant, and they will not budge. It has been different in the past, but things have changed now. We are now in a locked position where the Republicans will not budge one iota. And that being the case, it's a hopeless situation. People don't know what what the next day is going to bring. Republicans have brought forth their program, but it has nothing to do with the majority of the people, which would be the middle class and the poor. There is no possibility, if the Republicans got their way, that these poor people will be able to have medicines in the house or go to a doctor. Just think about it and you'd see. And as far as the companies that have relocated to China and Bangladesh, etc., for poor, because of their lower prices in their cost, you must understand that these people have invested millions of dollars in their factories there. They're not coming back. They represent hundreds of thousands, I would say more than likely, millions of jobs here in the United States, and we will never get them back because their profit is overseas, not here. So that taken all together, it's really a very dismal situation. And I don't see your possibility of rectifying it.
Okay. First of all,
Thank you.
if there's a Republican here want to counter his comments, you're free to raise your hand, okay? I agree with part of what you've said, but there's intransigence on both sides, number one. Number two, millions of jobs have left and they will never come back because since the beginning of time, production has always gone to the cheapest in the cheapest area for production purposes. And if you own a company and you're producing something here that sells for $30 and you can go overseas and have it produced and then it can sell for here for $15, you're going to go overseas, whether it's you, me, or somebody else. That's business. The point that this lady made earlier is valid in that whole discussion, is education. We are not educating our children to the extent, right now they participate and use all the latest technology, but they do not, they're consumers of it. They're not inventors of it. Much of the inventions and the forward thinking in our technology from Silicon Valley, for instance, have been the product of people who came here from Korea, China, India, and other places around the world, and they became Americans. They got educated here. They stayed here. They developed these companies here. But the point is, we have certain immigration laws, we can cover that as a whole separate issue, which force a lot of the people that come here to be educated to go back home. And we had an administration before the Obama administration that wouldn't let the cell business to be investigated and gotten into. So they did it in South Korea, China, everywhere, but not here. Now he freed that up. The point is we need people to get into technology. We need people to get into those sciences which we fail dismally around, compared to the rest of the world. Why aren't we doing something to instigate that in our educational system? And we don't. We do not. So education is the key. But we are not, the government is, the race to the top with Arnie Duncan, who is the Secretary of Education, has been done wonders, but it's not covering the whole world. Not the whole of the United States has bought into this concept, okay, even though it's money from the government that they get if they participate. New York State had a long time before New York State agreed to do it. The teachers union you could blame too for that. The point I make is, okay, there have to be basic changes in our thinking, in our government, and in our educational system. Those jobs will never come back. They're unproductive, okay? It's like saying bring back the horse and wagons because then, we threw us out of business on the horse business and the feed business and so forth. Well, the automobile did that, right? The fact is we recovered with imagination and with let's say, some people having the ingenuity and with the dollars to spend to create new forms of things. Why aren't we in alternative fuels like we should be? Why are we so dependent on the oil? You know, if oil went to $200 a barrel, where would we all be? I couldn't talk tonight, you'd have the lights out, okay? Because you need oil to produce all these things that we have, right? So the cost of things would go very, very high. The point is you need education to get into the 21st century. We have not entered the 21st century, unfortunately. There are some countries, some areas of the world that have made great strides in this, all right? But we have not made, let's say, enough strides. We've made great strides too, but not enough to start us back on the upswing. 70% officially, and I haven't seen the latest polls, but if you took it today, it has to be 95% are not happy with how things are going here. So we have to make basic changes. This gentleman mentioned it, she mentioned it, a lot of people mentioned it. There are basic changes needed in this country, and some people have to say, well, if you have to tax me a little more, okay? If it's going to do this, that, or the other, it's the basic getting together. Everybody has to hurt a little bit to get us all healthy again. That's my particular point of view, and I think it's intelligent. If you disagree, that's fine. This is your forum. Disagree. Now, does anybody have a solution to our problem? Paul Krugman? Okay. Well, I would say Tom Friedman more than Paul Krugman. Okay? But there are many people who have voices of reason, but I don't know who's listening to them, all right?
But a third party was split and the wrong person would be.
I can't tell you that. We've had that happen with, right, we've had it a number of cases, but if you have somebody today, what's the solution? Look at this, a very intelligent group here. Am I giving you too much credit? Somebody come up with a solution, please. Yes, you have it.
Hold on, wait for a mic.
Where the microphone's coming. We're all waiting with bated breath for the solution. Not the complaint, the solution.
One of the very important issues that this country has been overlooking is retraining unemployed people that can't get back into their own industries. Now, if we as lay people just try to just visualize the making of an automobile, do you know how many men and women it took not too long ago to put this car through on a running board? Now we have robots. Where we formerly employed 100 people, we now can use, for example, 5 robots, 10 robots. But there are millions of people that have no work. And this government talked about it a long time ago when we went into the Depression. That's a very serious issue. It's re-educating the adult. The children is a must, which we're not doing. Look at the cost of higher education. Even the city colleges, the state universities. Poor people can't afford these rates. So there's so much on the plate for this government to handle, and to have the Republicans and Democrats fighting now when we have so many important issues is almost an insult to our intelligence.
Well, I have a talk
of the average voter.
I have a separate talk on the rise and fall of superpowers, and we're into that. We're almost converging in that discussion here as far as the United States. There's a reason why the United States rose to its premier status, and there's a reason why we are really given that up, and on many different levels we've given it up. And I don't know if we have the vision, the power, or the imaginative politicians and leaders to recapture that and go up on that trajectory again, because all superpowers have failed in the past. We are the supposedly remaining one, and we are sort of giving up that title. Yes, sir. Well, is there somebody else that hasn't talked yet that would like to? After all, you're on television. No, we're not looking for a solution yet. We'll come to you for a solution, but since nobody else has a solution, we'll have to come to you. Does anybody have a comment that hasn't spoken before, that would like to? Not afterwards when I finish, but now. Anybody? Then I have to go back to the people who, this man has a solution. Your solution was do away with the human race. Well, somebody over here, right?
This gentleman over here.
Oh, there's a gentleman.